Alrighty, and welcome to part 2 of this series where we're coding up this design. I designed it using Figma a week ago. If you missed that and you want to see how I designed it, I went through not only how to use Figma, but I also looked at some tips and tricks in design in general in that one. You can go and check that out. If you missed the last video, I'd really strongly recommend you check it out. It's where I did the HTML. In this video, we're starting off with the CSS. We're going to be looking at the little screen sizes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the decisions I'm making because we don't have a mobile design. I just gave us a desktop design to base it off of, and we got to start mobile. The reason I'm starting mobile makes your life so much easier. There's so many less decisions that you have to worry about. You're just doing all the really basic stuff. There's no complicated stuff. It's really pretty straightforward. Now, one of the things I will not be doing is doing a drop-down menu or anything too complicated there, just because that would be a video in its own. And I've done a whole bunch of videos already on navigations. I've put links to all of them down below if you want to see how to do a mobile navigation or something that, drop out or pull down or whatever you want to call them. I've done it before. They end up being pretty long because there's lots of different parts and moving pieces to those. We are going to make the mobile navigation different from the big screen navigation though, so we will be looking at all of that. In this one, as I said, we're setting the stage. We're going to be looking at setting up our custom properties, getting everything going, and then in the next video, we're going to look at really making it fully responsive. But for now, let's go and set that stage. All right, so how do we turn that into this, or this into that, I should say. So the very first thing I'm going to do is let's come over to here, and before we even get into the body, before we even get into styling anything up, there's two lines of code, or one line of code I always write, and then there's a second line of code that I'm always writing these days as well. Before, I can't talk and code always at the same time because I'm trying to do this and I'm just throwing myself way off. But I do my star and my star before and my star after, and on this we do a box sizing order box. I think I have a video on this. If I do, there will be a card popping up on what that is if you don't already know. Basically, it just makes our life so much easier. The other thing that I want to do is we're going to come into here. We're going to go to root and we're going to set up some custom properties. People have commented that I'm using a lot of custom properties lately. I just love custom properties so much. If you do need backward support on it, I haven't made a video for it, so let me know if you'd be curious on that. Leave a comment down below, but you can use something called Post CSS, and that will help you make sure you have good support in all browsers, and you can still use custom properties, which, how did we ever write code before custom properties? I started using Sass just because of variables, and then I fell in love with other parts of Sass. We're not, here we're just doing regular CSS, but Sass is still amazing, but the reason I liked it was because of variables, so we have them in CSS now, which is amazing. So the first ones I'm going to set up are for my colors. I'm going to sort of speed this up and then maybe explain it a little bit in 1 second. So I'm going to have my color accent. Okay, so I think I got all the custom properties that I need, are the ones I'll be using. So here I have my 3 colors and my 3 font weights. Normally I might have other things in here as well, like font families, but in this case I only have 1 font family. So I think this is all we need for this design because it is pretty simple. And the idea here of what I want is the different things I'm going to be reusing throughout. I always start them with the color or the font weight or font size. I could make some properties for, but the font sizes are all over the place here. If this was a full design, I would definitely have some custom properties for font sizes as well, though, because you'd probably be reusing them a lot. If you haven't used custom properties, I do have a 6-part series on it that you can definitely check out. The link for it will be in the description below. Let's check this out for a second. So here we have all of this looking good, and then so here we have all this looking good. That's a good description of what's happening here, Kevin. So basically, it just lets me reuse these, and I think some people will go, well, isn't this redundant? Or like, do we really need to put this to the white? But what if the brand changes a little bit? They want to keep a light color, but instead of white, they're switching it off to being like a light gray. It's nice if I can only change that in one spot. It updates throughout the site. Or what if these change? I'm doing bold and black, that's what they are. But what if the design had like a 600 and was doing an 800 here? I might still use the terms bold and black, just because semi-bold and semi-black, whatever it would be, is kind of awkward. And this leaves it really easy to update without having to use some awkward names. I've also seen like font weight 400, font weight 500, 600, but I don't know. I like having it more like this. It's how I work. Definitely come up with however you want to name your custom properties. I find this system works really well for me. It's back from the day when I was using Sass a lot. This is sort of the system that I developed. So here, what do we want? We want this to be, cut that, delete the comment off the top, and boom. right away, our site should probably be looking a lot better just because we have a nicer font. And so I think it is. I'm actually also going to break this off into its own tab, or its own window, instead of being in its own tab. Now that we're doing the CSS, so I can see what I'm trying to get and what it actually looks like. Writing markup, we don't really care what it looks like too much. We just want to make sure the content's there. But as soon as I start my CSS, I like knowing what I'm actually trying to get the thing to look like, you know, what it should be actually looking like. Alrighty. So that's what we want it to look like. Actually, this is where it's a little annoying. I'm going to bring this one down with you. The reason I want both of these is because sometimes I'm going to be checking this for like some information, but just having this and this, and especially I'm in a really small screen space right now to be looking at it, is a little bit complicated. Ideally, it would be like full screen or very big on one spot, and you could just leave it in this view the whole time. But for our purposes, I think it's a bit more user-friendly like this, so we can see everything that we're up to. So it looks good. I'm going to change, I think my font family was 18. Did I go with 18? I did. So my font size would be 1.125 rem. Why do I do this instead of doing the HTML at like 62.5%? I do it because I don't want to overwrite somebody's thing if they chose specifically to have a bigger font size. If they set something bigger in their browser, I want to, you know, accommodate them. There's not many people doing it, but if they're actually taking the time to do that, I want to accommodate them. Also, if they do it the right way, your change in the HTML might not be working anyway, so you're wasting your time. You know, the one, you get used to doing this. I know what they are. These numbers make sense to me. So it just takes a little bit of practice. You'll get used to writing rem and m and have no issue with it. Font size, I just always use a rem, and then you have a bit less issues. All right, so that's a good start. Also my color. The color overall through most of the site will be color dark. Looks almost the same, but it is a very dark blue. And I'm also going to come on here and do my line height of, I'm going to do 1.6. I don't know if that's what I actually used. If you have a design, you have to match it exactly. You just come here, my font size was 18, my line height's 25. You could open up a calculator. Let's get one open. 25 divided by 18, pop up in there. Oh, I went with a tight line height. Really? I don't think so. That's not 1.38. Let's just see what that would look like. That looks really smushed to me. Maybe it's what I did, but I'm going to bring that open. I'm making an executive decision to pump that up a little bit. Now we can keep on going. Let's go back to this just so we can look at the overall thing. Usually I like doing all my typography here at the top, but I'm just going to start. We're going to start up right here with my navigation. So that is my nav. So my nav has a background color, might as well be explicit, and that is var color light. These are a little bit long to write if you're not used to custom properties. Sometimes you might find it annoying, but once you really start harnessing them, you will be very happy that you did. I just realized I did one thing wrong, or not wrong, but for my setup here to line these up, depending on how you want to do it, I wasn't really thinking straight, because here I have, let's just turn off word wrap. I have my image, I have my nav, and then I have this div. I don't have a container class anywhere, so I'm actually going to come up here and create a grid. I don't know what my grid's going to be yet, so let's just put in like 1FR for now, and we're going to play around with that a little bit in coming up. Because I'm going to use a grid to sort of define these areas, and then we're going to use the same grid up here as we're using down there. Eventually, we could put all this in one big thing, use subgrid. It's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited, but we're not quite there yet. I will be having some content on subgrid in the not too distant future, though. Firefox is supporting it, so we might as well jump in on that hype train. Okay, so background. I do want some padding on this, so padding. And actually, for now, let's start off by making this. I'm just opening up my inspector, which is really huge. So we gotta move that down a little bit. And I'm gonna click in Firefox, it's this little guy, but in Chrome, it's this little guy. It'll be next to this guy. It's this button is just on that side in Chrome. You click that and you can get into responsive mode. So let's just set this up for an iPhone. That's good enough. And one cool thing with Firefox is you can close this and it stays there. If you close it in Chrome, it will exit this responsive mode. And let's just get as much screen real estate as we can here. Okay, so I'm really just worried about the navigation for now. 1M, let's see what that looks like. Oh, I forgot something. I'm so used to doing code pens. Margin of 0. All right, and you know what I'm going to do on my body? For now, background of, let's just put that gray back. Gary, I wonder what Gary would give us. Just so we can see what's happening. Oh, I'm doing nav. Kevin, header. There we go. I think we're going to go with we're going to keep things really simple on mobile, and then we're going to make it a little bit more interesting should we? I'm trying to think. Okay, we're going to see. I haven't actually planned this out, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how I would approach things, because I had a lot of questions about how to approach making things responsive, or how do you approach how we can approach things like this at small screen sizes and the changes we can make to them. So my nav, let's start off by doing the nav itself as display flex. And then we have my nav. Oops, this should be .nav. I'm going to have my nav list, which is going to, oops, I put this in the wrong spot. I don't know if we need this actually. Display flex, margin of 0, and padding of 0, and a list style of none. Awesome sauce. And you know, we're not doing anything too crazy. I could check my font sizes on my navigation, but I could always modify, but I kept them pretty small actually. They are a size 14. So font size 14, I don't actually know because it's too small. So let's bring up the calculator. 0.875, 0.875 rem. Text transform can be uppercase. And of course the font weight can be my var font weight. Bold. I think it was bold. And if I didn't do it, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna put a little bit of letter spacing on this. 1 pixel. Cool. Text. Now you notice I'm doing a lot of that on the list itself and not on the links. Like this, I find comes a little bit redundant a bit, but where you put it, nav link. Here I'm just going to do the ones I need to. So text decoration of none. What else do we want on that? The color will be inherit. And I think what we're going to do for now is just here. I did my display flex already. We might as well just do justify content space between. I'm not doing a complicated like mobile nav and header text align center. I'm not doing a complicated mobile design. This is going to work to like really small screen sizes. Like where's 360? That's the smallest, or 320. Like that's good enough for me. I think I'd be okay with that. The one thing that's not working is actually my color dark. Oh, I was wondering, the color looked off. There we go, that looks a little better. You guys probably were looking at that the whole time going, what is he doing? When I told you it changed and it didn't actually change, you're like, it's because it didn't change, Kevin. So I think, you know, for me, that works perfectly fine. Ideally, would you make a little hamburger menu or something like that? Yeah, it'd probably be a good idea. But I've done, you know, just doing all of that takes a long time. And if you want a video on how we can do that, I have a couple. There will be links to those down in the description. There should probably be a card popping up now if I remember to put that as well. The one thing I'm going to do on my nav list though is I find they're way too close together up and down. So I'm just going to add margin top of 1M just to space that out a little more. And I'm going to bring this up here with this margin. If you prefer doing the shorthand of everything, that's fine. I'm just going to keep it like that. As far as the order of my CSS, some people prefer keeping everything alphabetical. Personally, that drives me nuts, because especially if you're doing a whole bunch of flex stuff, like I like keeping flex things together, and then my margin, my padding together, and then my text stuff tends to live together. I find for me, that's how I like to work. If you have another approach, perfectly fine. Yeah. And sometimes it gets a little messy. I'll often leave it messy, and then if I have time to go back through and actually clean it up and make it more how I prefer it, I will do that. This little guy is going to be interesting. I think we're going to keep it looking like that all the time. So that was my .weather. And I'm going to do a display of grid on this, which shouldn't change what it looks like. And we're going to do a grid template column of, I'm going to do a min content, 1fr, to columns. You have to put columns. There we go. Again, probably not changing anything, but we do have our little icon there, and we'll give this a background of var color dark. So now we should be able to see our icon. Awesome. Just realized I made a little problem. I put padding of 1em, but that's going to give me this on my header. So instead of doing that, we can't have that. There we go. On my nav list, I will have to put my padding. So we can do padding of 1em on all sides. And we'll also have some on my logo. Dot logo. I think I'll just do a margin top of 1em. There we go. Super duper. And just talking about design, like see this big space here, and then we have a little space here. That's really bugging me. So I'm just going to see where that empty space is coming from. My nav list. Oh, my margin top. I don't need that. We don't need that. I'm going to leave this open actually, because we're going to need it again in a second. Color is there. Color can be my var color light. So I can actually see my text. Awesome. And we will want some padding on this. Padding of, once again, we'll go with 1em. I'd use that as a starting point, and then I just sort of go from there. But just based on what I'm seeing here, I think that's pretty good. So I did my template columns. I put commas. There's no commas. There we go. That looks a little better. The reason I wanted to leave this opened is because we have a grid inspector. I have a video on that as well. Wow, I have lots of videos. So if you want to know how to use the grid inspector, check out that video, but we can actually see, if I close that, it's going to disappear. So I think what I'm going to do is actually break this off, separate window. So in my separate window, I'm just going to turn that on so we can see, there it is. And then I'm going to move it out of the way so it's not blocking our view. Oh, I'm not even going to be able to put the padding on here. Anyway, you can see the padding is going to cause some issues with this box. That's okay. So actually, we'll take that off right away. All right, so we have my weather icon. And what I want to do with this is I want to start from here, but I want to go all the way down to that. So for that, I can say it's a grid row of 1 over span 2. And even technically, I think, could we just write span 2 on that? We could. There we go. Let's shorten it up. So it's spanning both columns. Let's give it the background that it needs. So background color will be my var color primary. And padding will be my padding will be 1em because that's what we're using everywhere. And actually, in this case, that might be too much. Let's just do a 0.5. It's more from the left and the right that I'm looking at, because to center it, I'm actually going to do a display flex on this. Because by doing that, wow, look at that, it fixed itself. I was expecting to have to do more, but because of the way SVGs work, it is working out good. And now I think I can actually turn off this. And we can see that it's looking a lot like what I want it to, but it is taking up a little bit more room than I really want it to. I think a lot of that, and I'm not sure yet, but I think a lot of that is from my weather info. If you remember, my weather info is actually the paragraphs I have here. So that's the text. Because they're grid items, the margin in between them no longer collapses. Ugh. The fun of collapsing margins, and when they do or do not collapse. So here, margin on both of them can actually be 0. Super duper. And now this is the fun part, because I need space on the top of one and space on the bottom of the other one. So we could do a few different things since I didn't actually put these in a div. I think the first thing I'm going to do is my weather info nth. Let's just do first of type, and this could be first child too. Ooh, no, it couldn't. First of type. So the first weather info that is within a parent will have a margin top of 0.5em. Good. And then we could take the same thing. And this one could be last of type, so we'll take the one all the way at the bottom. And this one will be a margin bottom of the same amount. But what I do want to change a little bit on this is the text align. on this whole thing. Weather info will be a text align left. It was inheriting the other part, the text align center from that whole thing. And this could be a we could add in here like a margin left of 0.5 em. I'm doing 0.5 everywhere just so it's consistent, but it doesn't look consistent, so we're going to boost that one up a little bit because I want it to look like it's the same all the way around the sides there. Now, most of the time I like selecting classes, but you can see I am sort of cheating a little bit with these first and last of type. Another thing I'm going to do on here is the opacity of these will be lowered, because if you look at this, I know it's really small. Let's zoom in a little bit. You can see that it is a reduced opacity on those. So what I'm going to do is reduce the opacity here. Opacity will be, whoops, I already have that, 0.5. And the font weight, var font weight bold. There we go. No, maybe I didn't do that. I'll have to check. It looks more bold here than it looks there for sure. So, but definitely I want a text transform of uppercase. A letter spacing of 1 pixel, just to spread things out a little bit. And let's go check out, whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. Let's come back here and just check what font sizes I use, because I do believe it was quite small. Oh, I just realized something. I'm not going to do it like that. Current weather is, what's my font size? Oh, I did it as small as 10 pixels. Wow. Okay. So weather info font size is, oh, maybe we could actually. I'll show you a cool trick. Font size is 1.625 rem. That's super small. We're going to boost that up a little bit. 10's too small for that. Let's just do like a 0.75. I know this is my own design, so I'm making these decisions here. Because my spacing was with M's, that spacing's reduced along with it. This is one of the few times where I think I would actually go with rem for all the spacing, just so it doesn't change based on the font size. Let's just see now. Font weight. Font weight. Oops, var font weight bold. It looks more bold, but I think that's what I did. And now the fun part, let's come to here, I guess, and do my weather info span. So that's going to select the 6 degrees and the 35 centimeters. So on here, I'm just going to do the opacity of 1. Is that going to work? Shoot. Opa. So I made a bit of a mistake here. Because these spans are inside of this paragraph, I can't do the opacity here up to 1. The reason for it is their opacity is 1. Like if I put this down to like a 0.5, they're going to become half as transparent as that. Because it's sort of like this compounding factor. So they can't become more opaque than their parent. So in this case, I think I'd actually have to grab the color, which was this. Right there. So here, instead of playing with opacity, font weight, opacity, I'm just going to switch the color to this RGB value, which will fade it out a little bit. It's not my favorite way, but hey, it works. And then here we can just do color is var font weight of color light. This could be turned into a variable or custom property if we need to use it a little bit more. Now you can notice here I've line those up on the right side. We're going to try something. I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to try. Doing a display flex on these guys, which shouldn't really change too much, except I think we lost a little bit of empty space there. And then these spans, margin left auto. Ha, it did work. Cool. Without this, the margin left auto wouldn't work because spans are inline, so you can't really use the margin left like that. But because now they're flex items instead of something else, and I think these font weight, we could actually, not font weight, font size, just see, I think I had it a little bit like that. Align items center will do the trick. And obviously I don't want them stuck all the way on the edge there. So we can do we'll do it, whoops, with my other margin here, margin right 0.75 rem. Maybe that could even be a little bit bigger, but I think that works really well. The last thing we need is this little line that's coming in between them. So we could either do it on this one or this one. I'm going to do it with this guy here. But we're just going to do that as a first of type after. If I did it on this one, I'd probably do it as a before. The one thing that does mean is here I'm going to need to put a position of relative. So I can use a, first we need a content. And then I can do a position of absolute on this guy. So I need it I need this position to be declared as something other than static so I can actually control it properly. So the background on this, I'll just use the var color light, except on that one we can do the opacity now of like a 0.25. This time we can get away with that. It's going to need a height, so the height can be one. Let's go with like 3 pixels and see what that looks like. And a width of 100%. So we can see that it is there. It's not quite where I thought it would be, to be honest with you, but that's okay. Bottom of 0 would actually be the best. That's actually not bad, except it's a little bit bigger than I wanted it to be. Something like that. The only problem is 100% is going all the way to there. So I could actually do on here a calc of 100% minus 0.75 rem. And that should line it up perfectly. Look at that. What I'm actually going to do though is the margin. That's okay, that's okay. I just want a bit more space in between them. If this wasn't the way I set it up with the flex, I think it would work, but we can just add a bit. Margin, bottom, 0.5 rem. Let's just see. And then I could play with this number a little bit. Bottom, 0.25 rem. Negative. There we go. That looks pretty bang on. I'm just doing this to be half of that number. Yeah, that's why I did that. Just because the margin's going to be taking up all of that space. Like from here to here should be that 0.5, so I want that positioned right in the middle. It'll probably be like 1 or 2 pixels off perfect center, but visually to me that looks pretty balanced. My span, where's my span? One last thing, text transform. Not often I use this, but none. The reason I'm doing that is because I wanted the centimeters to be small instead of that to be all cap. Cool, now we can keep on trucking with this. We can keep on going. We're getting to this part. Now one thing you'll notice is because my big line height, this does not look so good. So I want to definitely bring that closer together. And we can bring in our background image. So let's get rid of that, or we can leave the gray color on there. We're going to cover it now anyway. So I have my main content area. Was it main or did I call it main content? Main and main ski. So main, I'm just going to we're going to use our grid on here. So we're going to do a display grid. No, we're not going to need it right now. That's going to come with our media query. But what we can do is display, what do we want? I'm just going to give it a whole bunch of padding. Padding of top and bottom will be 3em, left and right can be 1em. Remember, this is for small devices. And then I had my main title. Line height will be 1, just to bring that nice and close together. The font size is obviously going to be a little bit different. In this case, my font size is 48. That's probably pretty big for here. Just because 48, let's do the font weight first. Font weight, because I know that one is my var font weight black. The font size, in this case, font size 48 is 3 rem. That's not that bad, actually. I don't mind that too much. And that's actually looking pretty good. I think we're almost done with this, to be honest. So we had my main ski. We want to put our background image on. So background image, URL. And we want to put in our, we're going to go back a step, go to my images folder, and grab my skier. And as a default, that's not actually terrible. You might be saying, but I can't see the skier. Well, that's good I can't see the skier, because if I could see the skier, I wouldn't be able to read any of my text. So the positioning of that is already pretty good, but one thing I know I'm going to need is a background size of cover as well. So that might mess things up. That's making it hard to read a little bit at the bottom probably. So we might have to play with this a little bit. I'm just going to drag that to be full screen. I'm a little bit worried, you know, here it's starting to break, running into some issues along the way. I'm actually going to increase the padding on the bottom. So 3, and I'm going to put 5 rem here at the bottom. You know what though? Well, that's going to change with the media query once that goes to 2 columns anyway. Because obviously that's not looking good. We're going to tackle that not right now though. Let's worry about here. Okay, it's looking a little better. Yeah, okay, I think we can get away with that actually. Because these buttons, I'm going to stick with that. And these buttons here, we haven't done any of our buttons. Normally even for like this on these things here, what I would do is all the way up here with the body, I would have like H1, H2, H3, line height 1. Maybe there's a few other things I want to do on those as well. And another thing, because this is sort of like a typography area, it's reusable components, that type of thing, I would have my buttons up here. So BTN, if we go and look at my BTNs, they have some padding. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is cursor pointer. In this case we don't need it, but a button class should be able to actually be applied to a real button, which we would want this on. So cursor pointer, I also want to do with the padding, I think can actually come next. So padding was going to be, I don't know, 0.25 m and 1 m. We'll start with that and we'll see. It's probably going to have to be adjusted. You could get like the spacing in between things. Can we get it here? It doesn't want to give it to me. There might be a way to force that. All right, it doesn't want to give me the spacing between that and that, which is cool. Actually, this is a component. Oh, here we go. The padding's 1527 because I made that into a component with that. I always forget what they call it. That cool thing you can do with them. We looked at that in the last video. So I could pull those exact numbers if I wanted to, which it's a lot of padding on the left and right. That's cool. What's my font size on here? See, like one thing I love about this display flex, like why? Anyway, that's it. Don't grab position and other stuff and don't do that from these. The font stuff is where it's at. 16. So the font size is a little bit smaller than what I was doing up until now. So font size can be 1 rem. So really this is, I'm going to stick with this just based on my gut instinct, and we'll see what happens. And then I have my BTN primary. And this is why I like splitting it into different classes, so I don't have to rewrite this code anywhere. Actually, on here we have a text transform uppercase as well. And letter spacing of 1 pixel. Okay, so my button primary is going to have the background color of var color primary. Oops, not light. As well as a color of var color light. And just, you know, I didn't build out a whole system here, so I don't have my hover and all of that. So we're just going to do a really simple hover on this of the background color switching over to var color dark because it's nice and simple. So let's save that and take a look at what we got. Oh, text decoration none would be good. Text decoration none. And I forgot one thing that I wanted to do. You can see things aren't looking fantastic. Upper text transform uppercase needs a semicolon at the end. And what I want to do here is a display of inline block. And just because it fixes everything. And you know what? I did need more padding, so I was wrong. My instincts were wrong. 5 and 1.5. That looks more like what we wanted. And even this one maybe could be a little bit smaller. There we go. I think that looks all right. And that works for me. So now for the other one, dot button BTN outline. Let's just see border. It's a pretty thick one, 3 pixels, solid, var, color, primary. Oh, the font weight also. I didn't do that. Button, font weight, var, font weight, bold. That's looking a little bit better. Now, one thing we could do is, I think I'm going to leave things actually really similar. But 1 second, button outline, the color, be my var. Actually, you know what a cool thing we do here? No, it's not going to work. Var, color, primary. Obviously, we need some space in between those, so all my buttons could get a margin bottom of 0.5 em. I don't think it's going to break anything ever if you do something like that, having a little margin bottom. It's like a paragraph with a margin bottom. So that's never going to break anything. I do want to button outline, hover. We're just going to fill it in. Background, become var, color, primary. And that means that the color will have to go to var, color, light. See these custom properties, I go a little crazy with them. I love them. So there we go. I think that works perfectly fine. You could have that switch to a dark color as well for consistency. So the background could be the dark. Then you'd probably also want to change the border color to be the var color dark as well. So it, they look very, very similar. Now there's one problem that I did here on purpose, but we don't see it yet. And where we're going to see it is when those buttons actually line up next to each other. See how this one looks bigger than that? And it's because we have a border on it, and the border's adding to the total size, which creates this problem. So one way you could get around this is instead of using a border, you could use an outline. Now the outline's going to look exactly the same at the beginning, except the space in between them is reduced a little. But on the outline, we do have an outline offset. So you could do it for the same amount of size that you have on there. So now it just gives us that, but here border color would be outline color. And there we go. It's working perfectly. I like doing that a little bit. Outlines are a lot like borders, but instead of taking up space, they don't. If I did an offset here of like 50 pixels, it overlaps content. It's not actually pushing things away like a border could. And you can do offsets on them, which is really cool, which you cannot do on your borders. So for small screen sizes, I think this is working fine. Obviously we could do, or we didn't set up a hover on those. Maybe I'll do that off screen because it's pretty straightforward. But I think on the small screens, it's working pretty good. This is starting to fall apart pretty quick though. And then obviously once we get to big screens, we need to fix a lot of this up. All right, we're getting there. We just have one left to go where we're going to take this whole thing and actually make the magic happen and make it work across all different screen sizes. A lot more decision making to go in that one. We're going to be looking at CSS Grid. We're going to be looking a little bit at Flexbox as well and making you're gonna see it gets a little bit interesting. I fixed some mistakes that we sort of have to force Grid to work the way I was hoping it would work. You're gonna see when we get there. Make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss out on that one. If you did like this video and you're enjoying it so far, you can see how I can fight with Grid, how we can make it work for us, because sometimes it doesn't want to do what we want it to do. That's in the next video though. I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.